I'm joined by the very, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the genuinely one and only, the lady herself, Jane Couch. Jane, first of all, how are you?
I'm very well, Gareth. How are you? Lovely to hear from you
Yeah,
in lockdown.
yeah, I'm very well myself.
You're
Look,
looking good.
thank you. Look, here's you've had massive developments in your life recently, kind of retrospectively. You were a real pioneer in women's boxing, the first woman to fight for her professional boxing license in this country. And I had the privilege, of course, all those years ago, of covering your debut in a nightclub in Streatham, Caesars. It wasn't Caesars Palace, Vegas. It was.
Caesar's Palace.
Can you remember it all those years ago?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was quite a long time ago now, but I remember the nightclub where you went down the stairs and you stuck to the carpet when you walked in, didn't you? It was a memorable night, Gareth. Memorable night.
I remember that.
You've been to all my fights. You went to all my fights in America.
Yeah, I did. It was an amazing career and it was an amazing time because every time you had a fight, it felt like news. Do you know what I mean? It was a news story. And you know, you've done all kinds of things. You've had a really colourful life. But I do remember that the thing that stuck out that night in Caesars nightclub Streatham, was how low the ceiling was.
Ceiling was, yeah.
Once the ring was constructed.
When I looked up, I was like that far away from the ceiling. You looked up, my head was nearly touching the ceiling. Jumbo wasn't 6 foot.
Now, you had a brilliant career. You fought all over the world. You've been retired a while, but you brought a book out about your life,
Yes.
your struggles and your battles. A very moving, a brilliant book that was warts and all. And
thank you.
Amazingly, it was picked up by a film company, the film company of Suranne Jones, this very famous actress who's been in some brilliant dramas, a proper actor. And her company is going to make a serialization of your life. And is she going to play you?
I think up to now, Gareth, she's going to play the lawyer or my mum, but I'm pinching myself still to make sure that it's real. But it all seems to be going ahead, and obviously because of the virus, people are not working at the minute, and all the filming stopped. So as soon as all this is over, I'm co-producer with Suranne Jones, so we're going to co-produce it together. She's a legend. She's a legend of a woman.
Tell me how that manifested itself. How did it come about? And did they just get in touch with you? How did it happen?
Yeah, well, I wrote the book, and then that was with Pitch Publishing, but the agent is NBA, David Ryden. And then David called me to say that Suranne Jones had read the book and she loved it, and she wanted to do a dramatization of it, and it looks like it's going to be picked up by a national TV, could be the BBC or ITV, and it's going to be a 6-part drama. I think there was more with the struggle, with the court case. We have the 2 female lawyers and myself, and then we have Bernard Buckley and Nipper Reid from the boxing board, and I think that's why they picked it up, because the arguments in them days was because women have periods, it makes them unstable. And I think because that was Suranne's team is an all-female team, and they couldn't believe how sexist that the boxing board were, and how they really didn't want women's boxing. So I think that's what persuaded it, the courtroom battle with the boxing board. But, like you said, I've had a colourful life anyway. So it's going to make for good viewing, just like it makes for good reading.
It's over 20 years ago that you won that battle. What do you recall from those times now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time ago, Gareth. You sort of move on with your life, don't you? And then I mean, I look back and I sometimes think, oh, what was I thinking to even do that? But then I do believe if I hadn't have done it, that there'd be no girls boxing now, because you was around at the time of the court case and it was quite horrendous. The board just didn't want women, and maybe they have changed, and maybe things are getting better. But I just think the court case, the amount of money it costs to take the court, I just don't think any promoters would have been willing to put it up these days.
Mm.
And they wouldn't have wanted to upset the boxing board of control, which it didn't really matter for me. I didn't realise by upsetting the boxing board of control that I was going to be frozen out of boxing in this country. But I didn't realise that, and I didn't care. At that time, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was fight. I didn't care about anybody else, just wanted to fight and get my licence. And I knew once I got the licence, things eventually would get better, but not until I retired.
I had a great interview with a very young boxer, 22-year-old Ellie Scotney, the other day, who's working in being.
She's making some great moves, isn't she? I'm watching
She
her.
is.
She looks good.
Yeah, and she was about to make her debut a couple of weeks ago, just before the lockdown on the Matchroom card. But she said to me when I interviewed her that everybody talks about, Katie Taylor and Claressa Shields and Nicola Adams, but you've got to look back to Jane Couch. She was one of the real pathfinders in our sport, because you had to go through deep frustrations. You knew you were a fighter; it was just in you, because you were a flip the switch fighter. I mean, I was at many of your fights, and you really were the Blackpool brawler, weren't you?
Yeah, I just fight anybody. I didn't, I just wanted to fight. It didn't matter whether I won, lost, or drew. It didn't matter. I just wanted to fight and make it right, and make it right for people in this country to be able to fight, women in this country, especially when you see young girls like Ellie and Chantel Cameron, and they're all in the 20s and they've got such a massive career ahead of them, and now hopefully things will. They're still struggling. The girls are still struggling now, and they're still not on the same path as the men. But hopefully, they'll get the 3-minute rounds, and they'll get better sponsorship, and people are getting behind the girls now. There's still a lot of people against it, but then that's always going to be the same, isn't it?
I wasn't alone in following you, because a lot of us who were involved in the boxing industry at the time, I'm talking late 90s, early 2000s in particular, we could see that you were a born fighter, and you were prepared to, but you've had almost a bigger fight outside the ring than you in the ring,
Yeah, the biggest fight was outside the ring, because as well, I was only 23, 24 when I first started. And then as the court case got near, it was such a big, every national newspaper and every TV station was outside the courtroom. So for a young girl who'd never done an interview and never been in front of a camera, to be facing that sort of media, I was a bit overwhelmed by it. But Sarah and Dinah, the lawyers, got me through it, and they spoke to the press on a lot of occasions, but they got berated too. They got called lesbians and all sorts of horrible stuff by the media. But there was a group of boxing journalists, yourself included, Kevin Francis from the start,
yeah.
Terry Dooley. You're all the old school type, and even though it was getting like bad press, you always stood by me and was always at the fights, and you could see what I was trying to do, but it just wasn't the right time to do it.
I'd never thought I would hear you say overwhelming.
Yeah, it was overwhelming.
I didn't think anything overwhelmed you. When you look back, you fought some of the greats as well, remember? When you look back on your career, what are the fights that really stand out for you?
I think the first one was Sandra Geiger, when I first ever won the world title in Denmark. And then after that, Jamie Clampett, that was a big one. And Lucia Riker, when I fought on the same bill as Lennox Lewis, Vitaly Klitschko. And that was a great advert for women's boxing because although I lost the points decision, like Lucia had stopped everybody else before me, and she was an amazing, amazing fighter. And something that she had was power that women don't have. Lucia had the power to take everybody out. And she was trained by Freddie Roach, Emmanuel Stewart. She was sparring with little Mexicans in the gym and beating them up, you know. So that was an amazing time to be able to fight her. And another one was when I fought Dishong in New Orleans, and where Angelo Dundee done the corner with Matthew Sal Mohammed. And they were just amazing times. So, you know, although I had a struggle and I had a fight, I've got a great story to tell, and I think it's time to tell it.
It's amazing. When you were all those years ago fighting for your rights to be a professional boxer, going through your career. I mean, I think you fought in like 8 countries or something. You went all over the world, literally.
Yeah.
To every continent. Did you ever think that your life story, because it's been bought out, your life story has actually been bought? They have given you a huge sum of money for your life story. Is it not incredible? Is it the payday you have got in the ring, basically?
Do you know what I think, right? I'm a big believer in, you know, what you put out, you get back. And a big believer in karma. And I did struggle and I had a terrible time. And I write about that in the book because when I was boxing, I used to put this front on that I was okay. I wasn't okay, but I just pretended I was okay to get through because it was the only way that I would get through that sort of pressure that I was under, and, you know, all the negative comments, and it does affect you in the end. But I'm just lucky enough. I'm a tough northern girl, and you just crack on with things.
No, but also because I know we've talked about this before, that you literally earned no money for some of your fights.
No, but look, now it's come back. Now I've got a huge cash deal with the life story, so it makes it more right, you know, because all right, you didn't get paid for fighting and you got very little money and you was, you know, going without a lot of stuff, but now it's done good because women's boxing's flying at the minute, and it's all down to me and the team. But the main reason that I wrote the book was that one of the lawyers died. Sarah Leslie died of breast cancer in her 40s, and I just thought, you know, that case was so big, and if it wasn't for Sarah and Dinah, I couldn't have done it on my own. Also, Jane Couch is responsible for getting women's boxing recognised in the UK, but I'm not. It's them 2 lawyers. They did that. They would have got paid a lot of money to do that, but they did it on pro bono. So if they lost, they weren't going to get paid. They didn't care. They just wanted to win the case and get women boxing legalised. So I think that that's an even better thing for the drama because I was like the poster girl. I was fronting it all. I'd never done interviews, so they was getting me doing interviews on TV, and I wasn't coming across as well as I could have been, as well as the girls now that are media trained and know how to talk to the camera. I didn't know any of that. So I just think the whole story of having 2 very intelligent lawyers getting berated by the press and then to get my life story is just brilliant, because without them people in my life, then I could never have done what I've done, and women's boxing wouldn't be recognised now. But now it's going to get the proper airing on national TV, and the girls can all see what really did go on behind the scenes.
And it will inspire lots of other young girls to pick it up. As you sit at home in lockdown, in isolation, with your partner Brian and your chihuahua Ronnie.
Ronnie the Chi.
Yeah, Ronnie the Chi. When you survey, final thing, when you survey women's boxing right now, do you sit there and go, oh, I wouldn't have minded a battle with Claressa Shields, or I wouldn't have minded if Katie Taylor had come up to welterweight or whatever?
Yeah, I'd have gone down. I'd have gone up and down and fought a lot of them. I didn't care. I just wanted to fight. And believe me, if I'd have fought any of them, they would have been in a fight. A real fight. Not a boxing match, just a pure fight.
You've always been a fighter. You always will be. It's brilliant to catch up with you, Jane. And congratulations on the serialization of your life.
Thank you, Gareth. And I look forward to seeing you very soon in person.